As Tyler mentioned, I'm a leadership development and organizational development consultant. I do a lot of executive coaching. I've had the privilege of traveling around the country and more recently with my business around the world. So I wanted to start by telling you a couple stories about some of the places I've been recently. Senegal in West Africa and Peru, obviously, in South America. Senegal was an amazing experience. Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal, is a city of about 1 million people. And there's either extreme poverty or extreme wealth. There's very, very little in between. So you'd be driving around in the city and you'd be on a paved road, and then all of a sudden in the middle of downtown there'd be a dirt road. And you'd be stopped by a march or people that are protesting something. You have to back out and move around. And touring the city, I saw one stoplight in the entire city. It's just fascinating. One of the big experiences was visiting something called the Isle de Gorée. Has anybody ever heard of Isle de Gorée? No one had. I hadn't. Isle de Gorée is on the west coast of Africa, obviously. There's a similar place on the east coast of Africa. And these two housing facilities is where 18 million Africans were sold into slavery. So this picture you see on the bottom right-hand corner is what's called the doorway of no return. There were about 9 million Africans. This is the last thing they saw as they were sent onto a boat and shipped to Europe or America or wherever they were headed. Pretty powerful experience for me, and I'm not even African American. Excuse me. And then Peru, which was last December, fascinating country, growing rapidly. The capital city of Lima has about 8 million people, and they've grown so fast they've really outgrown their infrastructure. So the traffic in Lima is like nothing I've ever seen. One day it took us about an hour to go 2 miles across the city. It's really remarkable. But they put us up in a very, very nice hotel on the Pacific Ocean. The center picture is actually the view out my hotel window. And so a lot more wealth, a lot of interesting things. There's an artichoke vendor down there in the bottom right-hand corner. Just a fascinating place. And surrounding the city are rings of poverty. So the further you go out, the more and more impoverished you see people. The picture in the top left-hand corner is in Peru, actually, the wealthy live in low ground and the rich live in high ground. I'm sorry. The rich live in low ground, and the wealthy, the rich live in low ground, and the poor live in high ground. So if you look at this picture, this is a mountain that you don't see it quite so well. This is probably about 1,000 feet high. And if you look close, you can see these little yellow lines. Those are actually stairwells. Because they're poor, they don't build roads for them. So these people walk up and down every day just to get to their house and then back down to the bus to try to get into the city and go to work. Remarkable. So what's fascinating is, I go on these amazing trips and do really, for me, very fascinating work. And people always say, well, what was the highlight for you? What did you take away the most? What are the things that stuck out for you? And with both of these experiences, when I stop and reflect, the biggest thing that I loved about both places was the coffee. The coffee was remarkable. Both places, the best coffee I've ever had. And in fact, cafe con leche, coffee with cream, is really, really what I like, which is, coffee with milk or cream. And in both countries, they served it warm on the side. It's never served cold. Only in America, when I've traveled, is the only place where I see cold milk. But never forget, the first time I was in Senegal, I was in the hotel morning buffet breakfast, and getting ready to teach that day. And so the waiter comes over and says, "What would you like?" And we're talking. I said, "Cafe." He said, "Avec crème." And I said, "Yes." And off he goes. And I'm used to Starbucks. You go in, you get your thing, you get out, and you go, right? And so I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting, and it felt like an eternity. It was probably literally 8-10 minutes with no coffee, which in our society is crazy. Coffee finally comes out, and it's fabulous. And what I realized is every cup of coffee is made to order. When you order it, they go back and they brew it for you, and then they bring it out. And part of the society and the culture is you wait. And even in the roadside vendors, anywhere I went, the coffee was unbelievable. Excuse me. And it got me thinking that it was that moment of having to wait that really altered the way I was looking at the experience that I was having. Because there's kind of two ways to look at it. My good friend, Dr. Matt Redenbaugh, who's the chair of the chemistry department at the University of North Carolina, he told me this phrase once. He said, normally what we say is, don't just sit there, do something. And he said, well, that's not it at all. What it should be is, don't just do something, sit there. And so what happens in those moments as I'm waiting for coffee, or we're waiting for the bus, or we're waiting for class to start? What are we doing in those moments? This is where my work starts to come in with what I call the leader's mindset. Again, I do a lot of executive coaching, a lot of work with leaders across sectors, public, private, nonprofit. And we talk a lot about this. How are you looking at your world as a leader when you show up for work every day, when you engage with people? If you look at all these folks, lots of different backgrounds, entertainment, political, right, social movements, business, whatever it might be, one of the underlying common denominators of all these things is at some point someone said that person is a leader. Every one of these people at some point has been identified as a true leader. And what is that? How do they succeed? Because there's different ways of looking at leadership. There's a great book by Douglas McGregor, Human Side of Enterprise. I don't know if you've heard of this book. McGregor was used to be in the late 40s and early 50s, was the president of Antioch College, and then moved over to MIT Sloan Business School. And in 1960, he wrote this book, Human Side of Enterprise, which is pretty remarkable, because 1960 is the ending of the Industrial Revolution, right? Information age really hasn't exploded yet. Workforce is still very white, very male, very clear hierarchy and command and control type of society. And he's recognizing there's two ways you can look at the world as a leader. One is theory X and the other is theory Y. Theory X leaders, when they look around at their people and their workforce and folks they engage with, they see problems. People don't want to work. People have to be kicked, cajoled, right, bullied, anything possible to get them to do their jobs because they really have a distaste for being productive in the workplace. And then there's theory Y leaders that look around and they see possibility. And they see that the people are creative if you give them the opportunity. That they can do more if you provide them space to be creative and to open up and succeed. This is in 1960. Still applies today when you look at the types of leaders that we have that are out there. So we've got this mental framework and kind of two ways you can look at it. So ultimately, every interaction you have is this opportunity to say, okay, how am I going to do it this time when I engage with this person? How am I going to be in this interaction? This is an opportunity for leadership. This is a moment to do things differently than how I tried last time and I didn't succeed last time, so I keep banging my head on the wall. So really what I'm talking about is this idea of pausing. I was forced to pause when I didn't get the coffee right away. How do we use these moments of waiting, these moments of what I call transition, in an effective way for how we show up as leaders? How do we pause effectively? Because for many of us, life might feel like this. Tyler was touching on this. Some of the research out there on stress is pretty remarkable. In the last 2 years, more than 80% of people across sectors have said that their stress and their workload has gone up. It's not surprising with the economy tanking, right? People being laid off. And interestingly, when you look at what happens to morale as a result of this, of course, more than 80% say that morale has tanked in the last 2 years. So there's got to be a different way to go about doing it than the way we've always done it. So there's this great life principle that I want to share with you today, which is to take control of your behavior. And how do we do that? How do we take control of behavior? There's a great little model by Jack Canfield, the author and business mind. He sums it up this way, which I think is perfect. He said, you have events, and you have your responses to those events. And the result of those two things is your outcomes. Stuff comes at us, and what are we going to do with it when it comes into our mental mind? Because we all know that perception is reality, right? What we see, what we expect is what we get 9 times out of 10. If you imagine you're getting up in the morning, you take the cap off your toothpaste and brush your teeth, you go to put the cap back on, it falls down on the floor of your bathroom, you're like, oh man. Pick it back up, start screwing out again, it falls down again. You're really unlucky, it goes in the toilet or something, right? And then all of a sudden, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? All day you're carrying that with you. My toothpaste cap fell off, man, or whatever. And you carry this with you as you proceed from your morning to your first class or wherever it is that you're headed. There's great research by Harvard that talks about people's awareness. If you imagine you're in the grocery store, you're waiting to check out, you've got your groceries, and you see this woman kind of coming up alongside you, and she's got a couple kids, maybe 3 kids, and there's kind of chaos. The kids are pulling stuff off the shelves and grabbing candy, and she's trying to deal with them and deal with her groceries. The next thing you know, she's cut in front of you and she's putting her stuff on the conveyor belt. What's the first thing you think? What the hell, man? I'm standing here, right? What are you doing? Or you might be thinking, better her than me. Whatever it is. You've got these thoughts, these perceptions. And what the research has shown is that more than 80% of the time, people have no idea that what they're doing is affecting others around them.